Every Halloween, when the veil between the living and the dead grows thin, I find myself drawn to the places most people avoid. The air feels heavier there, colder, almost alive. I've seen shadows move when no one's around, and heard whispers that don't belong to the wind. These aren't legends, they're real places you can still visit. So if you dare, come with me, as we uncover America's top 10 most haunted places this Halloween. If this story sent chills down your spine, then hit that like button and subscribe for more real haunted tales, because trust me, the next one will haunt you even after the screen goes dark. 1 Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I still remember the first time I saw the Eastern State Penitentiary. The massive stone walls stood like a sleeping monster in the middle of Philadelphia, silent but watching. I had read about its haunted history, but nothing really prepares you for the feeling when you walk through those gates. The air inside felt different, heavier, colder, like it carried the memories of the thousands who once lived and died there. As I walked through the long, crumbling hallways, my footsteps echoed back at me, bouncing off peeling walls and rusted cell doors. In cell block 12, the guide told us it was common to hear whispering voices and faint laughter when no one else was around. I smiled nervously, pretending I didn't feel the goosebumps creeping up my neck. But then, just as I passed one of the empty cells, I heard it, a soft whisper, right behind me. A man's voice. I turned around instantly, but the hallway was empty. I told myself it was my imagination, but a few seconds later, a cell door slammed shut down the corridor. Everyone in the group froze. The guide went pale. He said, quietly, that no one was near that block. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that sound in my head, the whisper, the slam, and that heavy air that seemed alive. I realized then that Eastern State Penitentiary isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by time itself. 2. The Stanley Hotel, Estes Park, Colorado. I arrived at the Stanley Hotel just before sunset. The white facade of the building glowed softly against the Rocky Mountains, almost too peaceful for the stories I'd heard about it. The air was crisp, the kind that smells like pine and old wood, but something about it felt aware. It's strange, you can't see anything unusual, but you feel like the place knows you're there. Inside, everything was polished and charming. The old elevator creaked as it moved, and every hallway seemed endless, lined with red carpets that muffled your steps. My room was on the 4th floor, the same floor where guests have reported hearing children laughing late at night when no kids are staying in the hotel. That night, I sat on the bed with my notebook, trying to write, when I heard it, faint laughter, distant but clear. It came from the hallway. I opened the door and saw no one. The laughter stopped, replaced by the sound of a ball bouncing slowly down the corridor. I felt my chest tighten. The ball rolled toward me, stopped at my feet, and then, nothing. No footsteps, no voices, just the quiet hum of the hotel breathing around me. I didn't sleep much after that. Around 3 a.m., the old piano in the empty ballroom started playing by itself. Soft notes, hesitant, like someone was remembering a song they used to love. I stood there listening, my heart racing, realizing I was standing in a place where the past never really left. The Stanley doesn't just tell ghost stories, it lives them. 3. The Queen Mary, Long Beach, California. When I first stepped onto the Queen Mary, it didn't feel like a ship. It felt like a memory. The faint scent of salt and engine oil hung in the air, and every step I took echoed through its metal corridors like the ship was breathing. I'd heard the stories, sailors lost at sea, passengers who never made it home, but I didn't expect to feel them. As I explored the lower decks, the temperature suddenly dropped. The guide mentioned that this area, known as the Grey Ghost, once carried soldiers during World War II. Many never returned. When I touched the cold steel wall, I swear it vibrated slightly, as if a heartbeat pulsed behind it. Later that night, I joined a small ghost tour. We stopped at the first-class swimming pool, long drained of water but still echoing with unseen footsteps. The guide turned off the lights for a few seconds, and in that silence, I heard the sound of splashing, faint, rhythmic, like someone swimming in an invisible pool. A woman near me gasped, and I saw her staring toward the diving platform. There was no one there, yet the faint outline of a figure shimmered, just for a second, before vanishing into the darkness. In the engine room, I passed door 13, where a crewman was crushed decades ago. I paused for a moment, and the heavy metal door let out a low groan, as if responding to me. I stepped back instantly. As I left the ship, the lights on the deck flickered, once, twice, and for a moment, I thought I saw a man in uniform standing by the railing, watching the ocean. When I blinked, he was gone. The Queen Mary had whispered her secrets again. For Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Louisville, Kentucky. The night I arrived at Waverly Hills Sanatorium, the air felt thick, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest. The building loomed ahead like a dark shadow carved out of the hillside, its windows hollow and watching. I had seen photos before, but standing there in person was something else. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, like the walls were holding on to every scream that ever echoed through them. Inside, my flashlight beam danced across peeling paint and rusted bed frames. The smell of damp concrete mixed with something faintly metallic. The guide whispered that thousands had died here when tuberculosis swept through in the 1900s. I tried to imagine their faces, but all I saw were shadows stretching across the hall. When we reached the 5th floor, where nurses once jumped to their deaths, my heart began to race. The air grew colder with every step. I felt a tug on my jacket, gentle but real. I turned quickly. No one was there. Then, somewhere down the hall, a door creaked open by itself. The guide's voice shook as he said, "That's room 502. We didn't move for a long moment. Later, in the body chute, the tunnel where corpses were once sent down the hill, the silence broke again. This time, I heard whispering. Not from one person, but several. It grew louder, overlapping, desperate. I turned off my flashlight for a second, and in the pitch darkness, I swear I saw shapes moving, white, almost human, reaching. When we finally stepped outside, the night air felt like freedom. I glanced back once, and I could swear I saw a figure in a nurse's uniform standing in the window, watching me leave. 5 The Myrtles Plantation, Street, Francisville, Louisiana. The road to the Myrtles Plantation wound through moss-covered oaks that seemed to whisper with every gust of wind. By the time I reached the iron gates, twilight had already turned the sky a deep violet, and the house ahead glowed faintly behind the trees. They call it one of the most haunted homes in America, and from the first moment I stepped onto the porch, I understood why. The air inside was thick and sweet, like old perfume mixed with humidity. Every board creaked beneath my shoes, and the chandelier above the grand hall swayed gently though there was no breeze. The guide mentioned the story of Chloe, the enslaved woman accused of poisoning the family, whose spirit, they say, still wanders the halls wearing a green turban. I listened, half smiling, until I saw the shape. At the end of the hallway, a woman stood near the mirror. I blinked, and she was gone. The others hadn't noticed. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but the mirror's surface rippled for a second, as if someone had brushed their hand across it. Later, when I went upstairs, the faint sound of humming followed me, soft, sad, and close enough that I could feel the vibration against my ear. I spent that night in the Magnolia Room. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps just outside my door, bare feet on wooden floors. They stopped right outside, then moved away toward the staircase. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but the scent of jasmine filled the air. When dawn finally came, sunlight poured through the windows, and everything looked peaceful again. But I knew what I'd felt, that invisible presence still watching from behind the glass. The Myrtles doesn't let its ghosts rest, it lets them linger. 6 Lemp Mansion, St. Louis, Missouri. I reached the Lemp Mansion just before dusk. The building sat quietly among the city streets, its Victorian beauty masking a darkness that time could never erase. From the outside, it looked like any old house, but the closer I got, the colder the air became, as if the mansion was breathing in my presence. I had read the history. The Lemp family, once rich brewers, destroyed by tragedy. 4 suicides. 1 house. Too many secrets. When I stepped inside, the scent of old wood and faint cigar smoke filled the air. The guide told me that the family still lingers here, that their grief never left these walls. I walked into the dining room, the same room where Charles Lemp took his life. Everything was still. Then, faintly, a door creaked open upstairs. Later, as I explored alone, I heard the sound of a man sighing deeply, close behind me. I turned, expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty. My reflection in the mirror looked strange, darker, like something else was standing just behind me. When I blinked, it was gone. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, my camera suddenly powered off. The air turned icy. I could see my breath, even though it was summer. Then a whisper, low, heavy, brushed past my ear. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt the sorrow in it. That night, when I finally stepped outside, I looked back at the mansion's windows. For a brief moment, a figure stood behind the lace curtain, still, watching, almost human. The Lemp mansion doesn't need to show its ghosts to prove they're real. You just feel them, the weight of every tragedy that ever lived there. 7 Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. I'll never forget the first time I stood in front of the Winchester Mystery House. It didn't look haunted at first, just strange. Endless windows, twisting hallways, staircases that led nowhere. It felt like the mansion itself was alive, built not by design, but by fear. Sarah Winchester's fear. They say she kept building it to confuse the spirits of those killed by her family's rifles. Standing there, I could almost feel those restless souls watching from the walls. When I stepped inside, the air shifted, not cold, just heavy, like 1,000 whispers pressing down at once. The floors creaked with every step, as if the house was reacting to my presence. I followed the guide through narrow corridors that turned back on themselves, rooms within rooms, doors that opened into solid walls. My sense of direction vanished completely. In one small hallway, I felt something brush past my shoulder. The guide hadn't moved. I froze. A faint scent of gunpowder filled the air for a few seconds, then disappeared. Later, in the seance room, the guide said Sarah used to speak to the dead there every night. I stood quietly, and for a moment, I heard a faint tapping, like someone knocking from the other side of the wall. 3 slow knocks. When we reached the staircase that rises straight into the ceiling, I stopped to take a picture. My phone froze. The screen flickered, and for a second, the image showed a woman standing halfway up the stairs, looking directly at me. But when I blinked, she was gone. I left the house before sunset, but that night, I dreamed of endless hallways and footsteps that never stopped. The Winchester Mystery House isn't haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by guilt that never found peace. 8 Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Weston, West Virginia. The first thing that struck me about the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum wasn't its size, it was its silence. The massive stone building stood under a gray sky, surrounded by fields that seemed to hold their breath. I'd seen pictures before, but nothing captures the way the air feels there, thick, cold, almost electric. It's as if the walls remember everything that ever happened inside them. As I walked through the long, echoing corridors, my footsteps bounced off the cracked tiles. The guide told us that at its peak, over 2,000 patients were locked inside, most without proper treatment. I could almost hear the echoes of their pain. In one of the patient rooms, I found old drawings still etched into the plaster, stick figures, names, crosses. The energy was suffocating. In the women's ward, a door slammed shut at the far end of the hall. Everyone jumped. The guide swore no one else was there. Then came the faint sound of crying, not loud, but soft, like someone weeping into their hands. We followed the sound, but it moved away as we walked, leading us in circles until it just stopped. Later, I entered the medical wing alone. The smell of rust and damp air hit me instantly. My flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I saw movement, a shadow gliding across the far wall, too tall to be human. My heart pounded. I whispered, "Hello," and the word echoed back, distorted, like someone mocking my voice. When I finally stepped outside, the cold air felt like escape. I looked up at the asylum's windows, dark, hollow eyes staring down. And for a brief second, I thought I saw a figure watching me from behind the glass, just standing there, waiting for the next visitor. 9 Crescent Hotel and Spa, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. When I first saw the Crescent Hotel, it looked too beautiful to be haunted. Perched on a hilltop surrounded by mist and pine trees, it glowed softly under the setting sun. But locals call it America's most haunted hotel, and the moment I stepped inside, I understood why. The warmth of the lobby couldn't hide the chill that lingered in the corners, the kind that doesn't come from bad plumbing, but from something unseen. The guide told us about the hotel's dark past, how in the 1930s, it was turned into a cancer hospital by Norman Baker, a fake doctor who promised cures and left many to die in the basement morgue. As we descended into that part of the building, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged. The walls were lined with old medical jars, some still sealed. I felt my stomach twist. I lingered at the doorway to the old morgue. The air was dense, heavy. Suddenly, I heard the sound of wheels rolling, slow, metallic. When I turned, an old gurney was moving across the floor, creaking softly. There was no one near it. The guide's flashlight flickered, and in that moment of darkness, I thought I saw a shape, tall, thin, standing at the far end of the hallway, just watching. That night in my room, I kept hearing faint footsteps pacing above me, but the floor above was empty. Around 3 a.m., my bathroom light turned on by itself. I didn't move. I just listened to the quiet hum of the building and the faint echo of voices beneath it, as if the patients Baker promised to heal were still waiting for their turn. When dawn came, the hotel looked peaceful again. But I knew what I'd felt: the Crescent doesn't let anyone leave untouched. 10 Villisca Axe Murder House, Villisca, Iowa. The drive into Villisca was quiet, almost too quiet. It's the kind of small town that feels frozen in time, white picket fences, empty streets, and the sound of crickets fading into the distance. But at the end of East 2nd Street, there's a small white house that doesn't quite belong. That's the Villisca Axe Murder House, and the moment I stepped onto its porch, I could feel the air shift. It was like the world outside didn't exist anymore. Inside, the rooms were still set as they had been in 1912, the same furniture, the same creaking floors. I walked slowly, the wooden boards groaning beneath me. The guide's voice was soft when she told us what happened there: 6 children and 2 adults, murdered in their sleep. No one ever caught the killer. I tried to imagine that night, the silence, the footsteps, the sound of the axe, but the deeper I went into the house, the less imagination I needed. In the children's bedroom, I felt at first, a sudden drop in temperature, like the air had been sucked out. Then came the whisper. A faint giggle, followed by a single word I couldn't quite make out. My skin crawled. When I turned toward the small closet, I saw the door move slightly, just a few inches. The guide hadn't touched it. Later, as the lights dimmed, I stood alone in the parlor where the bodies were laid after the murders. The silence pressed in around me, and somewhere above, the sound of a heavy footstep echoed once, then again. When I left, I didn't look back. But driving away, I saw a faint figure in the upstairs window, small, still, and watching. In Villisca, the past doesn't rest. It waits. When the clock strikes midnight and the laughter fades, these haunted places don't fall asleep, they awaken. The whispers grow louder, the air turns colder, and the shadows remember every step you took. This Halloween, if you dare to visit, just remember, some doors, once opened, never close again.